Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be ranking every Premier League club's best Wonderkid. And whenever you're doing a ranking video on YouTube, you need to work out the tier list. And here we have it starting from the bottom. Need more games, pretty often the case for young players. Okay season, that's pretty self-explanatory. Breakthrough year, I had to divide break and through into two different words because the tier list didn't quite like it. Great season, and then finally elite. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to fill out the bottom four columns, and at the end of the video, only one player is going to make it into elite, and that one player is going to be one player who made it into great season, and we're going to promote one of them up. The rest of them can only go into the bottom four, and it doesn't matter how many players are in each column. You're just going to be doing honestly based on the season they're having, but only one in elite. And I have to say before we get started, to qualify as a Wonderkid, you can only be 21 years old or younger at the time that I'm filming this. Thankfully, there's no birthdays in and around the time I'm filming this. But you got to be 21 and under. So in the comments, I want no one talking to me about Martinelli, Saka, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Phil Foden. They're all too old. They're not 21 or under. So let's do it. We're going to start off with Everton. And for me, there's only one option for the Wonderkid this season. It has to be Gerard Branthwaite. The 21-year-old Englishman stands at a massive 6'5" tall, and he's formed a formidable partnership, playing 19 Premier League games this season alongside fellow Englishman James Tarkowski. And I was quite worried in the summer when Everton let go of Jurgen on a free. They all decided not to sign Conor Cody on a permanent deal from his loan from Wolverhampton Wanderers, and I wasn't sure after Branthwaite had a good loan season at PSV whether he was ready to take the step up to the Everton side in the Premier League straight away. I wasn't sure if he's going to be able to make that jump. However, he's definitely proved me wrong, and I think Everton fans will clearly be able to say he's definitely one for the future. And when you look at his FB ref for this season, his tackles, interceptions, blocks, aerial duels, ground duels, he excels in all of those areas, and it's one where he's a future Everton and England star as well. He's currently playing in the England under-21 side alongside Gerald Kwanzaa at the back, and it's only a matter of time before I think he breaks himself into the England senior team as well, considering the fact that England have had a lot of issues for that left-sided centre-back position. He's left-footed Branthwaite, and he can also compete maybe in the future with the likes of Levi Cowell, who hasn't had a great season at the moment. He's also been playing a little bit of left-back, but it could be one where, if he takes his chances, continues to play as consistently as he does, it could be one where he could be the future of England and Everton. So where is he going to go in this tier list? I think for me, he's definitely had more than an okay season. I think he's had a really solid season. I don't think he's quite been great compared to some of the other players we're going to be talking about, but I think this year has definitely been his breakthrough year, and I think that's quite an easy one to start off with. Next up, we've got Wolves, and I think their Wonderkid is Hugo Bueno. The 21-year-old Spanish left-back has played 4 times this season, and he's also made 8 substitute appearances. The issue is he's got Ryan Aït-Nouri ahead of him. He's also got Matt Doherty ahead of him, a left-back / left wing-back position. I will say the few times I have seen Bueno, I think he looks really promising. I think going forward, he looks a very good technical player. Defensively, sometimes a little bit suspect, but I think he's better than Aït-Nouri at that, but they're not as good going forward. I think the issue is Aït-Nouri is only 1 year older than him at 22, and also when he's not playing, Matt Doherty has been playing a left-back. So it's one where I think he needs a few more game time, and I think this is quite an easy one. So I think it's a simple, just needs more games. Now then, let's go to Manchester City, and this was actually a really difficult choice because they have a few players who are really good. You've got the likes of Rico Lewis, you've also got Oscar Bob, but when I think about it, it has to be Jeremy Doku. I think for me, when you think about it, he's keeping out a £100 million signing in Jack Grealish on the bench, and for that reason alone, I think you have to go for Doku. It's one where he's played 21 matches this season, he's got 4 goals and 6 assists, and actually the talk around him, I thought he actually had more goals and assists than he has. But I think a lot of those has been against Bournemouth, in which he really burst onto the scene in the Premier League especially, and really took everyone by notice. However, I think, he's different, he's exciting. He's not the typical Pep Guardiola type of player, but I think it's one where when he gets molded by Pep and he finally figures out when to make a run, when to pass, I think he's going to be truly, truly terrifying and be one of the next great wingers. But where does he go on the tier list? It's definitely not his breakthrough year, because I think he had that time when he was in France. He also had the 2022 World Cup when he got called up for the Belgian side under Roberto Martinez. So for me, I think he's having a great season. And when you consider what he's done for someone who's a 21-year-old in a Manchester City side under Pep Guardiola, I think there's no arguments can be made about that. Next, we're going to Aston Villa, and for me, it's John Duran, the 21-year-old Colombian striker, has made 14 Premier League appearances this season. However, they've all been off the bench and totaling only 185 minutes this year. However, he has managed to still get 2 goals. That's a goal every 92.5 minutes in the Premier League. And in the Conference League, he's got a bit more game time, 5 matches played, 4 starts, 1 substitute appearance, and he's got 1 goal in that 290 minutes he's played there. And I think it's one where under Unai Emery and being the understudy to Ollie Watkins, he is going to develop. He is still very young. Obviously, he's never going to be first choice, but it's going to be one where I think he needs to work his way into that side eventually over time under the tutelage of Unai Emery. And I think this is another easy one, really. Yes, he's having an okay time of it, but really, most importantly, what he needs is more games. The fifth Wonderkid is for Nottingham Forest, and for me it has to be Anthony Elanga. 21-year-old Swedish winger has played 21 times in the Premier League this season and got 4 goals and 6 assists in 14 starts. And for me, he has been an absolute revelation since joining from Manchester United. And I think it's one where if you look at the current Man United squad, especially on that right wing compared to Nottingham Forest, it kind of seems like why on earth did Man United let him go? He definitely could have done something for them this season. And his average is 4.19 progressive carries per 90, which I think is huge for Nottingham Forest, considering they're a side who often sit back and go on the counter-attack, and he's been so crucial going forward, linking up with the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White, Callum Hudson-Odoi when he's been fit, Taiwo Awoniyi when he's also been fit, and Chris Wood. I think it's one where he's really shone, and when he hasn't been playing, I think it's really evident in the Nottingham Forest side, and for me, he's had a phenomenal season. To the point where I think I'm actually going to put him in having a great season alongside Jeremy Doku. One, because I think it was so unexpected, but 2, he just has been that good for Forest this season. Someone they completely, was maybe more hope than expectation, but he's absolutely delivered and he deserves to be in having a great season. The next team is Brighton and Hove Albion, and for being completely honest, half of Brighton's side is Wonderkids. I could have chosen any of a number of players for this position. However, I think it has to be the jewel in the crown, who I believe is Evan Ferguson. The 19-year-old Republic of Ireland striker has managed to get 6 goals in the Premier League so far this season, and in all competitions he's made 25 appearances, 12 of those being starts. However, I do think, when I see rumours about him potentially being linked with bigger clubs this summer, I think it's a bit premature. I think 6 goals is a decent return for a 19-year-old, but I don't think it's, quite the levels for a Man United or a Tottenham Hotspur or any of these big sides I've been seeing. I think it's one where he needs to focus on Brighton at the moment. I think it's one where he needs to, displace Danny Welbeck, who starts occasionally up front. Even João Pedro, who's better as a number 10 as a second striker, sometimes starts as a lone striker for Brighton. So I think it's one where maybe he needs to stay, establish himself, usurp the likes of Danny Welbeck in this number 9 position, and maybe get, 15 to 20 goals in the season for Brighton, playing the majority of the season, and then I think it's time for him to get his move. But I think at the moment, if I was advising Ferguson, I'd be saying stick to Brighton. It's a perfect club for you. You get your game time and you develop into that top striker, which I think we all think and hope he will become. But with regards to this tier list and ranking him in terms of compared to the other Wonderkids, I don't think he's having a great season, I think it's having a mid-season. But I don't think it can also be his breakthrough year, also because of the fact that, I think that was last year really when everyone kind of took notice. He scored a fantastic hat-trick in the FA Cup. So for me, I think this has got to be just an okay season. Maybe a bit harsh, but I think maybe the way he exploded onto the scene last year, it took everyone by storm, and that really set the expectation really high. But I think he's just having an okay season, under the radar. Nothing wrong with that as a 19-year-old. But for me, I think he probably will be personally a bit disappointed. But like I said, I think he needs to stay at Brighton, and he will develop into a fantastic striker one day. Next, we're going to move on to the other side of the M32, Crystal Palace, and their wonderkid Matheus Franca. The 19-year-old Brazilian joined with a lot of hope and expectation from Flamengo in the summer. However, he's only made 1 start this season, and that was in the FA Cup against Everton. And in the Premier League, he's only played 6 matches, all substitute appearances, and in which he's only made 64 minutes. I think it is one where he is struggling to get game time, definitely, and it's quite surprising, especially because Crystal Palace let go of Wilfried Zaha in the summer on a free transfer, and at the time of recording, Eze's only played 16 of the 22 Crystal Palace games this season, and Elise's only played 10 of the 22. So when you take all that into account, you'd be expecting him to start, or maybe even just come on as a substitute, more games than he has this season. However, Roy Hodgson just doesn't seem to trust him or some of the other Crystal Palace youth team players. He's made some comments in recent weeks about saying they need to work hard, he doesn't quite trust them. And it could be one where, maybe a change of manager might suit him better. But I think we've all seen the YouTube clips of him, if we haven't seen him live, and I think he is a fantastic talent, but he just definitely needs more games, and it might be one where he might get that under a new manager. The next team then is Liverpool, and there were a few options for Liverpool. I could have gone with Gerald Kwanzaa, Stefan Pacetic, Harvey Elliott, Ben Doak, and I was even thinking Conor Bradley perhaps, especially after his performance against Chelsea. But when I was doing my research for this, I realised Ryan Gravenberch is only 21 years old, and it's mental to think because he's been around at the top level for so long now, but it had to be Gravenberch. He's obviously made his debut for Ajax in the 18-19 season, and he was only 16 years old at the time, become the youngest Ajax player to ever play in the league, beating the previous holder of that, Clarence Seedorf. He spent 4 seasons at Ajax before moving on to Bayern Munich, where obviously it's been well documented. He didn't have a fantastic time there under Nagelsmann or Tuchel. And so this last summer he moved to Liverpool, and in that time he's made 27 appearances in all competitions, 15 starts, 3 goals and 2 assists this season. And one more, he settled in incredibly well. You know, he really hit the ground running, but then as of late in the last few months, he's kind of dwindled off a little bit. And it is a tough one with Gravenberch because he is so young. He's still 21 years old, but because he's been around for so long, people forget, you know, he's still such a young player. He maybe, you kind of think of him at the same age as Szoboszlai or Alexis McAllister in that Liverpool midfield, but no, still only 21 years old. But this is the tough one where he goes, because he definitely has already had his breakthrough year. He had it at Ajax several seasons ago. You know, he definitely hasn't had a great season, but also with 27 matches played this season in all competitions, he obviously doesn't need more game time. He's getting a decent chunk of it as well. So I think for me, it's just one where he's had an okay season, you know, joining Evan Ferguson there. But I think, you know, these are players who are trying to be elite, and when they just fall short, I think that's okay because of they're so young. The expectation, you know, you're more likely to give them a bit of leeway. And I think, if we're being honest, he's had an okay season, arguably settled in the worst of all the 4 Liverpool midfielders, but still done all right. I think okay is a good place for him to be. The next team is Fulham, and their Wonderkid is no one that's on the books at the moment. It's actually going to be Luke Harris, 18-year-old midfielder, who's actually on loan at Exeter City as of January. And I think this is a tough one because it was slim pickings for Fulham, I'll be completely honest. There weren't very many players under the age of 21 who actually played many minutes for them this season. But I think when I look at him, I think the 18-year-old is going to be a star for Fulham at one point rather than later. So I have bent the rules a little bit, but I think he is going to be a Wonderkid for Fulham. He's gone on loan to Exeter City, like I said, and during that time he's played 4 games, 4 starts, 2 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss, no goals or assists as of yet. But I think we've seen a lot of players in recent time go down to the Championship and even League One, which Exeter City are, and done really well in League One. So I think it's one where he's going to be the future for Fulham, but at this moment in time, it has to be just, you know, need more games because you can't even break into the Fulham side. Had to go to League One. I think this is a very simple one. We're at the halfway stage now with the 10th player for Man United, and I think their Wonderkid has to be Kobbie Mainoo. I might have got this one wrong. I know some Man United fans might be screaming at me saying Alejandro Garnacho, he's only 19, still tearing it up. I acknowledge Garnacho, but I think I'm going to have to go for Mainoo just because when you're 18 years old and you're tearing it up in midfield, which is such a crucial area of the pitch, you know, you really need, if you're going to win games of football, you need control in that midfield. And Mainoo is not only taking control of games of football, he's dominating games of football. So for me, I'm going to go with him over Garnacho. Man United fans, if I got that wrong, please let me know. But I just think Mainoo is something special. I think his composure on the ball, his willingness to receive the ball in tight spaces, and his passing is next level. He's got an 86% accuracy so far this season. And I think especially after I saw his goal versus Wolverhampton Wanderers, which got the United the 4-3 win, that was the whole idea for this video. That's where it came from. And I think it's one where Mainoo is going to be the future. And I just hope that he isn't too overexposed into the Man United side too early on, because I think he could be something special, not only for United, but also for England. But where does he come into this tier list? I think it's one where he's having more than just an okay season. I think he's actually having a pretty good season, but he hasn't played too many games this year to really shine a light on it. I think maybe we could say this is just his breakthrough year. I think it's one where the Man United side at the moment, they've got so many injuries and so much rotation that if he can cement himself in that midfield, and then, you know, next season maybe with a full team and some new January transfers, I mean, if that happens, I think it's one where he could potentially break into the Man United side and be a starter for them week in, week out. But I think I'm just going to go on the conservative side with him just for now, and I think we're going to say breakthrough year. The next team is Luton Town, newly promoted to the Premier League, and one player who I've been incredibly impressed with this season, who I think is a wonderkid, is Tiedemann Mengi. The 21-year-old English centre-back is a former Man United youth prospect who actually left the club in search of more game time, more regular game time actually. He did get a little bit, but he's played 15 matches in the Premier League so far this season. 13 of those have been starts, and he's been in the Luton side who have been giving it absolutely their all, and actually have been doing alright this season, better than I think most people gave them credit for, and he's been at the heart of that. He's played the most minutes of any centre-back for Luton this season, and I think even if Luton were to go down this season, which at the moment looks like it could be very likely, he's going to be a player which a lot of teams are going to be sniffing around. He's only 6 foot tall, but I think we've seen in the modern game, centre-backs don't need to be massive, as you see as the likes of Mark Gahey at Crystal Palace. But I think he's one where, even though he's only 6 foot, his aerial presence is still stood out. And I think it's one where he's definitely going to get a move. If not, he's going to stay in the Premier League with Luton if they manage to survive. And for me, where does he go into this tier list? I think it's tough because they've got some really good players here. But if I'm being completely honest, I think this is the first season where he's really come out and shone. So I think he's going to have to go in breakthrough year, maybe ahead of the likes of Kobbie Mainoo, just because of the fact that he's been starting for majority of the games so far this season. I don't think it's quite a Branthwaite level, because I think Branthwaite has been, there week in, week out, 90 matches played, whereas Mengi has only started, I think it's 15 matches played, 13 starts. So I think that's the right order there. And for me, I think breakthrough year, I think next season he's going to absolutely explode. Newcastle United up next, and we're going to have to go for Lewis Miley. I was maybe tempted to go for Tino Livramento, but I think, again, similar to Kobbie Mainoo and Garnacho, when a midfielder does it like Miley has been doing it, and he started in some of the biggest games, I think he has to be the one being put forward. I think, he's got 4 years on Tino Livramento as well, and in the Premier League, he started 11 matches at the time of recording, 1 goal, 1 assist, and not only that, he started away to PSG, he started home to AC Milan, some of the biggest games Newcastle have had in their recent history for a long period of time, and he's been starting it. Arguably should have won the game away to PSG. I mean, unfortunately to get knocked out of the Champions League, but he's been such a crucial player for them this season, especially with all the injuries they've had. He's really stepped up, and at 17 years old to be stepping up into that midfield is something that is, incredibly impressive, similar to Kobbie Mainoo. And I think it's one where, this is another future England star. I mean, as they continue to get game time for Newcastle, hopefully he gets the chance, when everyone's fit, to be able to, continue to stay on this side and shine in the side, because he truly has been exceptional. But I don't want to get too carried away. I think it's one where he's had more than an okay season. I think he's had a breakthrough season, similar to Kobbie Mainoo and Tiedemann Mengi. This has really been the first season, I think. However, I think, the ceiling, the sky is the limit really for him if he continues to do so. And I think at Newcastle, he's at the perfect club where the trajectory of the club is also on the up. So breakthrough year for Lewis Miley. Next up, we have West Ham United, and their wonderkid undoubtedly is Divin Mbama. I think it's one where he's played only 80 minutes in the Premier League so far this season and 88 in the Europa League, but he undoubtedly does have potential. I think with Antonio's injury and Danny Ings hasn't always been favoured, you'd think Mbama would be playing more minutes, but it seems like David Moyes seems to prefer Jarrod Bowen up top, not really giving him the nod, especially in the cup competition season as well, especially. Because West Ham United had a very easy draw very early on. They played Lincoln City in the League Cup, but he only played 24 minutes as a second half substitute. Unfortunately, then West Ham did get Arsenal and then Liverpool, so the chance of him getting minutes was unlikely. But in the FA Cup, he did come on for Lucas Paqueta against Bristol City. He came on in the 14th minute, which was really encouraging. But then in the second leg, obviously, Said Benrahma got sent off, so he didn't play any minutes in that. And in Europa League, only 88 minutes. They had a tough group, but West Ham and David Moyes really wanted to ensure they qualified through that. So his minutes have been restricted, but he's been absolutely tearing it up in Premier League 2. He's got a recent hat-trick, and I think it's one where he is the future. But it seems like, David Moyes doesn't want to seem to be giving him the chances, and I can understand that. He's still young, he's 19-year-old. You need your striker to, really carry the team, especially if you're West Ham. But it seems like one where he needs maybe a different manager similar to Roy Hodgson and Franke, but I think it's one where he is undoubtedly a future Premier League player. He's got the minutes, he's got the potential, but he just needs some more game time. So simply, he's going to have to join the list at the bottom, need more games. Next up is Sheffield United, and this is really slim picking. So I've gone for William Osula. I could have gone for James McAtee, however, he is on loan from Manchester City, and I really wanted to pick a player who was actually permanently contracted to the club. So I've gone for Osula. He's only played 590 minutes in the Premier League this season. He's got no goals and no assists. However, Sheffield United are rock bottom of the Premier League, and they've only scored 19 goals as a team so far this season. So the chances are him getting some goals is also quite slim pickings. However, he has scored 3 of Sheffield United's 6 goals in the FA Cup this season. He scored 2 against Gillingham away, and he got 1 against Brighton at home. And it's one where he scored 3 goals in all competitions so far this season, which actually makes him the second highest joint scorer in the Sheffield United's team across all competitions. You know, he's level on goals with Archer and Hamer on 3, but he's only 1 behind the joint top goal scorers in McAtee and McBurney. It doesn't reflect well on Sheffield United, but he has started to come into his own this season, especially since Chris Wilder took over in charge. And there is potential. He is only 20 years old, but ultimately, 1, he needs more games, but then 2, he also needs some better players around him as well. Right, next we have Chelsea, and this is arguably one of the easiest picks I've had to do for this entire tier list, and that has to be Cole Palmer for Chelsea's Wonderkid. Arguably signing of the season, you know, and arguably one of the players who are just player of the season in general. 25 matches played in all competitions, 20 starts, 12 goals and 6 assists. And he's been phenomenal. He came in under a lot of criticism when he joined from Manchester City. For the price tag, was it too much? He hasn't really done it at the highest level consistently anyway. But it's one where he's definitely knocked down that door at Chelsea, and his starter is the main man, and arguably he's knocked down the door of that England squad as well for the Euros this year. Maybe competing with Saka, I think maybe more in contention to be the backup to Bukayo Saka. But definitely, he is having a great season, and that was one of the easiest decisions I've had to make this whole tier list. Next, we move across London to Arsenal, and this was actually a lot harder than I thought it was. I wanted to put in the likes of Bukayo Saka, Reece Nelson, Eddie Nketiah, Gabriel Martinelli, Emile Smith-Rowe, maybe even Saliba. But actually, they're all 22, 23, 24. They've all grown up. None of these are 21 or below. So it's actually, I've gone for a player who isn't even at the club at the moment. He's out on loan at Swansea, and that's Charlie Patino. The 20-year-old English midfielder is on loan at Swansea City at this moment in time. He's played in 22 matches in all competitions for Swansea, 13 of those in starts, and he scored 3 goals and got 4 assists. He's finding it difficult to start him week in, week out, but when he does play, he's got a very sensible head on him. His positioning is incredibly good, and also he has some incredibly well-timed runs into the box, and it's one where he's left-footed, he's a central midfielder, and he's 6 foot. You'd almost think to yourself, you know, maybe if he was a few years more developed, then, you know, he could be starting in the left-sided 8 position for Arsenal, which they've had a lot of trouble with this season. They've had Kai Havertz playing there, Smith-Rowe playing there, Jorginho, Rice, and it hasn't quite worked out. No one's been the natural fit. They're trying Smith-Rowe at the moment. We'll see if that works out for him or not. I think a lot of Arsenal fans are fingers crossed that position works out for Smith-Rowe. Otherwise, it might be one where he has to leave eventually to get some game time. But I think Charlie Patino, he's got the right profile for that left-sided 8 for Arsenal. Could be one for the future, but ultimately, what level is he playing at? Is he good enough to be starting week in, week out along the lines of Saka and Smith-Rowe? They obviously came into this Arsenal side at the same time. It's one where he was a little bit younger, so didn't get that opportunity. In terms of this tier list, I think it is going to be one where he does need more games. I think he's one where... yeah, he could be the future for Arsenal, but we don't really know. You can't even see that. Let me move myself up here. You don't really know if he's going to be the future or not, because you want him to be starting more games for Swansea, and then if he can dominate in the Championship, then he can do it in the Premier League as well, hopefully. But I think when Arsenal are competing at the very highest level, is he going to get the game time? I don't know, but obviously for this tier list, he definitely needs more games. Next up is Bournemouth, and for me, it has to be Alex Scott as a Wonderkid. The 20-year-old was last season's EFL Championship Young Player of the Season, and he was also in the Team of the Season. And not only that, for Bristol City, he was also Bristol City's Player of the Year and the Players' Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year. And for me, he's one where he's going to go right to the top when he does, break his way into that England side. And eventually, I think he'll be too good for Bournemouth as well. Sorry, Bournemouth fans. But he has been hampered with injuries this season. He's only played in 8 matches, 445 minutes, 1 goal, 1 assist. But you can definitely see the potential in him, and you can definitely see that he's going to be a star. But you can't lie, the injuries have hampered him this season. So does he need more games? I think he would be playing more games if it was for the fact that he wasn't injured. Is this his breakthrough year? I don't think so. I think that was in the Championship. You've seen a lot of players historically have been gotten a Championship Young Player of the Year and have gone on to do fantastic things in the Premier League. So I think this one where he's just having an okay season. Hopefully the injuries are behind him for the remainder of the season and he can really force his way, to start consistently in this Bournemouth side, which I don't think is going to be an issue for a player of his quality. But I think it's one where I think we just need to see it more consistently. We're into the final three teams now, starting off with Burnley, and for me it has to be James Trafford. The 21-year-old English goalkeeper had a phenomenal time at Bolton Wanderers on loan last season from Manchester City. And then who can forget his heroics for England in the under-21s Euros. The fact that he saved the penalty right at the death. And he even said to his teammates before the game that he was going to save a penalty in that game. And I think, he himself is a phenomenal player. But I think him and the whole of Burnley have had a tough time of it this season. He's played 22 matches, conceded 45 goals, only kept 2 clean sheets. Can't really blame it at him. I think the whole Burnley squad were maybe expecting to do a little bit better this season. But I think he's made the second most saves of any goalkeeper in the league this season with 86, only behind Wes Foderingham. However, his save percentage is only the 15th best of any goalkeeper used in the Premier League so far this season. Make that what you will, but just for context, he's one below Matt Turner in 14th, who's been ridiculed for having a terrible time in Nottingham Forest, and Nottingham Forest need to upgrade on him. However, he's one better than Emi Martinez, who, just recently won the trophy at the Ballon d'Or for being best goalkeeper last season. So, take the save percentage what you will. However, I do get very similar vibes to Bazunu at Southampton last season. Goalkeeper who does very well in League One, on loan from Manchester City. The club signed permanently from Manchester City, but maybe he's just a little bit too young and not quite experienced enough to make a difference for that team. Sai gets relegated, and now you've seen Bazunu this season doing fantastically well at Southampton, who are chasing promotion. And it might be one similar to Bazunu for Trafford. The jump from League One to Premier League was maybe a little bit too much, and maybe they should have gone for a Championship team for himself first. But you can't blame him for that. He trusted himself and his abilities. Burnley came in for him. He said, yeah, 100% I'll go for that. The whole club probably expected to do better than that. Not having a go at James Trafford himself. He's only 21 years old. Still doing remarkably well. In terms of this tier list, it's tough because I don't think he's having a great season. He's definitely having a good season. So I think it's definitely more than okay. Is it his breakthrough year? It's tough to tell because obviously being a Man City graduate, I think it's one where, there were a lot of eyes on him anyway. And I think especially considering the Euros and what he did for England, that was probably on people's minds a lot. But I think in terms of actively being in people's conscious this season, I think he has to be in great season. I think just about, but I think great season. If there's a good season, I'll put him in there, but I think great season just based on the fact that I think he's done, for what he's done for Burnley especially, I think he's better than all four of these guys this season. So for me, great season for James Trafford. Now we're heading to Spurs for the penultimate Wonderkid, and I think for them it has to be Destiny Udogie. The 21-year-old Italian left-back has been phenomenal this season, arguably been in the team this season so far at left-back. 90 matches played at the time of recording, 2 goals and 2 assists. Promising wing-back when he was in Italy. However, under Ange Postecoglou, he's now been inverting himself into the midfield of Spurs, and I think he's done phenomenally well for someone who's just 21 years old. Spurs have an absolute gem on their hands, and I don't think we need to debate this too much. I think he's definitely got to go in having a great season. He's going to be up there for which player gets promoted. The team we're going to be talking about is Brentford, and I might get this guy's name wrong, Yarmolenko, the 19-year-old attacking midfielder from Ukraine for Brentford. I hope I've got his name right. Brentford fans or just Ukrainians, let me know in general if I've got that right or wrong. But he's played 13 matches in the Premier League this season. 4 of them have been starts. No goals or assists yet to talk about. However, I have seen glimpses of him, especially when he's coming off the bench. And he looks a very, very tidy player. Brentford, there's not very many options to talk about for the Wonderkid. However, the attacking midfielder, when he comes on and plays in midfield, defensively, he actually looks really good for a 19-year-old, someone who wants to be going on the front foot. His dribbling is really good. His passing in the final third is really good. But it's actually his positioning and his defensive awareness is what really impressed me for Brentford. He's always in the right place at the right time. And it could be one where he's the future of Brentford's midfield. That midfield for Brentford gets a lot of stick for being very workmanlike, but I actually think they're incredibly creative as well, and they have to be to, feed the strikers of Mbeumo and Tony when they're fit. So I think for me, Yarmolenko is definitely going to be a future. He's definitely a prospect at the moment in time, and for the here and now, he needs more games before we can really determine what he's going to be in the future. And now we need to make our final changes. First of all, am I happy with the entirety of the tier list? I think so, but I just have to say, I think maybe I was a bit too optimistic with James Trafford. I'm going to put him down to breakthrough year next to Jared Brantwaite, because I don't think he's having as good a season as Brantwaite. Yeah, and now we've got to figure out which of the 4 players in having a great season is going to go up and have elite. So this is really tough, actually. You've got Jeremy Doku, you've got Anthony Elanga, you've got Cole Palmer and Destiny Udogie. And this is tough. But I think the player that I'm going to go for, it's going to be either Cole Palmer or Destiny Udogie. I see Elanga at Nottingham Forest, and I'm just going to pass him just for now, just because I think he's still incredibly raw, and I think while at times he's incredibly exciting, he could go a little bit further and be more clinical than he is so far this season. I think Jeremy Doku, I think his numbers are very skewed by that Bournemouth game, but I think Premier League defenders are terrified of playing against him. So I think he definitely could be elite, if he has got more goals and assists this season. I think, again, he's very raw. I think Cole Palmer, a bit like a celebration, has been very cold and very crucial for Chelsea this season, in a terrible Chelsea side this season. I think Destiny Udogie has been arguably one of the best left backs in the league this season. But who am I going to put in elite? I actually think, I didn't think about this before I made the video and started recording, but I think I'm going to go just for... I don't actually know. I don't know. Let's go for... I'm going to go for Destiny Udogie. Just because I think he's in the team of the season so far. In terms of left backs, there isn't very much competition. Maybe you could go for Luca Dean at Aston Villa. At Arsenal, do they have anyone? City. I think he's going to be in team of the season by the end of the season, and he's going to be a contender for it. So for that reason, I think I'm going to put him in elite, and I'm just going to put Cole Palmer in great season. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one.